Hello and welcome back to Kohler Commentary. I took a little bit of a break, but today I am back and thrilled to welcome 3 friends and incredible recruiters onto the podcast. That's right, guys. I'm talking about you 3 in front of me. I have Josh, Abe, and Daniel here who bring a wide range of experiences in helping people find their dream jobs, right?
Something like that. Thanks for having us, Joey.
And so I wanted to invite you guys onto the pod to just kind of share how you, landed in this field yourself, pros and cons with being a recruiter, and then, hit us with that wisdom, just giving some practical advice, because I think there are many of us who are thinking about different jobs and how we can better prep for interviews. And so what better way than to have 3 of you guys from 3 different fields with multiple years of experience to bring it here for us today. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Miss Joey.
I realized, by the way, sometimes I go by Eunjoey, sometimes go by Joey. Today will be a Joey day. And I also realized that this is the first time I've had multiple guys on the podcast since the last Enneagram 9 husbands chat, which was very popular by you listeners. So hopefully the same in a different way, because I feel like you guys aren't going to be hit too deep with the personal stuff unless you want to go there. You just give me a little nudge and then we'll go there, because some of your wives asked me to take you there.
Whoa. On a recruiter Hold on.
But if not, for today, we'll just keep it a little PG, professional guys. All right. So before we dive into the questions themselves, can you take turns maybe sharing just a quick bit about you so that the listener has a little bit of a aura to put with your voice?
Wait, do we all have the same Enneagram?
No.
Probably not.
The reason I asked all 3 of you was because you all have 3 different Enneagrams.
Oh.
Yeah.
What are you, Abe?
I honestly forgot.
I'm a 4. I'm a 2.
Maybe
2, 4, 6.
Yeah.
Oh, even numbers.
Even numbers. I love even numbers. Do you guys like even numbers or odd numbers?
Oh, I don't like numbers. I'm so bad at math.
Is that why you're
numbers
a recruiter?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I went to HR.
Okay, well, actually, Josh, you kind of did it for me. So let's start from the lowest number, but not the lowest Enneagram for sure. Am I right? Get it in the house for the 2s over here. Enneagram 2s, in general, they are known as the giver or the helper. They are very empathetic, sincere, and warm-hearted. A little sentimental, and I can attest to that with this big little pod microphone you came in with for me. And they typically are also known for being unselfish, altruistic, and having just an unconditional love for others. Would I say I am describing Josh Kim right now?
That sounds fantastic.
Okay.
That sounds accurate,
good thing
actually.
I'm only talking about the good things.
Yeah. Let's not go
into the bad. Because we're keeping it professional.
Yeah.
But Josh, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Josh. You all know Susie's husband, or Rory's dad. Not originally from Texas. I'm actually from New York. I was actually born and raised where Matt was born.
Oh yeah, connection.
Found that out today.
Just FYI, Matt is stretching quietly in the background.
I had awkward eye contact with him just now. But yeah, no, I've been in recruiting for about 9 years. Never planned to get into recruiting. I don't know if anybody plans to get into recruiting. I feel like it's always something that you kind of just find yourself in. But I graduated with a sports business degree.
Oh, okay.
So I originally moved to Texas to try to link up with a sports team. I did work for FC Dallas for a little bit. I was going to move to Seattle, but then I met Susie.
Oh, and
so
the rest is history.
Yeah. But yeah. Been recruiting for 9 years. I currently recruit at Fossil, which is the watch company. I'm specifically recruiting in like the fashion corporate side.
Okay, thank you. Next is our Enneagram 4 recruiter. Our Enneagram 4s are very self-aware. They have a sensitive soul, and they are very creative and personal. At their best, they are the inspiring creative types, like I just said, and they're able to renew themselves and transform theirs and also others' experiences. Do you resonate, Daniel?
Yes.
The creative part, for sure. It's died a little bit in my life these days, but yeah.
It's hard to keep it. I'm always curious for 4s, and I rarely get to have 4s on the podcast, but I am curious what creativity looks like in general with like your work as well. But let me let you introduce yourself.
Well, thanks for having us, Joey. I'm Daniel. I originally am from the Bay Area, lived in New York for a little bit, and then now in Dallas, and I will be moving to Los Angeles.
Why?
I'm getting married.
Let's go.
Dun, 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 dun.
But yeah, so I've been in the recruiting space. I think just like Josh said, it just falls in your lap kind of thing. I was introduced to it by like a friend of mine who I was like interning with at a tech company. And so I've been in the general recruiting space for about like 7-ish years. But I started out in a very like entry-level role called recruiting coordinator, which exists in almost all companies. You literally just schedule interviews and send email confirmations and things like that. So I did that for a lot of years, like maybe like almost 4.5, and then ended up in recruiting in tech. So I mostly hire for like software engineers, product designers, folks like that.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. And last, but maybe Lee, I'm just kidding. We have our Enneagram 6. Sixes are the reliable, hardworking, responsible, and trustworthy ones.
Question.
Well, actually, I just like, with the Enneagram, you also have to know more of like that inner soul type of stuff. And guys, we've kept it so surface level in our interactions, and this makes me just want to dig deeper with each of you.
Oh, you gotta start by me.
Sixes are known to be excellent troubleshooters and can foresee problems and foster that kind of cooperation. So at their best, they are internally stable and self-reliant and are known to champion themselves and others because of their loyalty, the loyal guardian. Enneagram 4s are the romanticist or the individualist.
Fitting.
So
Sure.
Abe, do you agree with what I just said about you?
Yeah, I would say for the most part.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Abe. Grew up in McAllen, Texas. Shout out 956. Born in the Philippines, actually.
Oh.
Been in Dallas since 2015. I'm actually a little bit different from these two because I'm in campus recruiting. Been doing that for about 5, almost going to 6 years now. A little bit different background. I got my master's in accounting and started off with the Big Four, but hated it. Long story for that journey, but now I'm doing campus recruiting for a company called ST Microelectronics, which is basically hiring a bunch of interns in electrical and computer engineering. I mainly look for college grads or interns in college.
Okay. You guys are also connected by being in the same cell group, which is something that we have at TBC, the Blessing Church, and you guys are in Matt's cell. So the opportunist in me just kind of gathered the data that you're all recruiters, and there's no way you can't be available to just stay back after cell group happens. And so that's how we are here today. You guys did kind of share, each of you already, that you didn't necessarily go for recruiting itself, but it did somehow fall in each of your laps. And for some of you, maybe there was a career change or a pivot. But what about recruiting made you enjoy it initially to make it where you've had quite a few years of this being your career?
So when I moved here looking for a job in sports, couldn't find one. So then I was in the Galleria Mall looking for jeans. And I found myself in Abercrombie. And I was asked if I had a job, and I was like, I don't. So I became the manager at the Abercrombie and Galleria Mall.
Were you like model?
No. I was not modeling. No, thank
He was
God.
managing the
No,
models.
I was managing because I had a college degree. And that's when I realized, I was like, man, this, like, nothing against it, but I just never thought I would be working retail with a college degree. So I was like, personally, I was like, this might be arguably one of like the lowest points of my life, selling jeans and spraying cologne around the entire store. But I just needed a job. So recruiting came because Susie's friend worked in recruiting. And I just wanted an office job, working Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, having weekends off because that's when we started dating. So I just wanted weekends. But then I was doing agency recruiting. So I was working for a really small firm, and we would work on multiple different companies as our clients. So I was doing anything from specifically in the aerospace and engineering field and military contracts. And it was really hard because it was very like salesy, where like my boss was super old school. He's like, you don't hang up the phone. You have the phone in your hand and you just dial the next person. And you just keep going, and you have to get like 25 submittals, which is like you have to submit 25 resumes a day, and you have to have like 50 to 100 calls a day. I did that for almost 3 years. I literally just stuck through it just because I was like, I just needed a Monday through Friday job. But it was getting kind of hard because I started dipping into military contracts where I was asking people to leave the States to be engineers in Iraq for a military company in like war during the war. So it was like really hard for me to have to like sell them, like pitch them like, hey, like you're only there for like 2 months, but you're making all this money, but it's also Iraq. Like it's like you're working for this military company. So it just didn't feel right for me to do it. And it was really hard. So I didn't want to do it. But then I ended up working for Southwest Airlines after that for 2 years. And then after Southwest, I went over to work for a golf company, and then I worked at Nike for a couple years. So the reason why I stayed in it, I have a lot of cool benefits for my family, like flying for free or Nike discounts and all that kind of stuff. And I realized like, oh, the hack is every company in every industry, they all need recruiters. So I'm very transferable no matter where I go. So job security meant a lot. And also just like being fluid and working in a different industry was always like a nice thing. And I do find enjoyment going back to my Enneagram. I love giving. So being able to provide somebody not only with a job, but like a potential start to their career or things like that, I think I find the most satisfaction in that. And I find the greatest satisfaction to be able to help friends find jobs. I mean, these guys know, like being in recruiting for so long, you build a good network to where if I can't help you, someone in my network could probably help you. Every time I've tried to get out of recruiting, I've failed. So I don't know if that's God telling me like, nah, you're recruiting
For the rest of your
for the rest of your life. But yeah, I've had multiple times where I try to get out and I've always just found myself coming back in.
Yeah, I love that because I think hearing your first experience as a 2, that would be really draining and almost like inauthentic to who you are, right? But to at least stick it through so that you can see that long-term benefit. And I would enjoy also giving discounts to my friends if that was my job. So I feel like I resonate with that a lot on that end.
Oh, I got a quick true story about Josh. With his,
I'm nervous.
Bring it.
no, it's a good thing, man. With him being so like friendly. So I was at a recruiting trip. I think I was flying to Illinois, one of my schools. But then I randomly got a text from Josh, but it was a Venmo for $10. He said coffee on me. I was like, what? Things like that. He did it twice too. My other recruiting trip. So I'm like, dude, appreciate it. I need that coffee. So that was pretty awesome.
No, I mean, I traveled a lot when I worked at Southwest, so I just know business travel so hard. So just knowing, like, having that little, like, caffeine boost or just having, like, a message from someone, I felt like always helped.
He made my day.
If you're listening to this and you know someone has a big day ahead, just Venmo them a little something, you know, and it will do wonders. It's just little things. Why don't you continue talking?
Sure.
Like, where I'm coming with you is you didn't like accounting. So then how did you decide to find and then stick with recruiting?
Yeah, so I chose accounting because I thought it was safe. I always followed my friend Sam. I think he's like just always been a mentor for me. So he like played the French horn, so I played the French horn. He went to accounting, so I did accounting. So fortunately, I got a job, which actually helped me move to Dallas. I grew up in a very small town and wanted to get out. So accounting, was a blessing in disguise. So
yeah.
Started off with this Big Four company, but then like hated it mainly because I just couldn't see myself just sitting there in a room, laptops full of people, and it was pretty just boring. And I had a bad manager. That was the biggest reason, I think. But at this company, my friend was like, hey, you should volunteer for their campus recruiting team. Basically, they would use me as an employee of the company to go talk to these students at these schools, or like I would go with them to dinners and basically try to convince them to come to our company, not the others.
Oh.
So I loved it. I really loved it. And I think it stemmed from me I was a college ministry leader back in, I guess, 2012-ish. But being at those campuses and just interacting with those students, I've just like fell in love with it. So I was obsessed with leaving accounting and trying to find a campus recruiting role.
Oh.
It was a big journey. It was hard for me because I had to convince these companies to hire me, even though I didn't have a campus recruiting background. So it took me about maybe like 3 years or so for me to actually get a campus recruiting role.
Okay.
So it was definitely a hustle.
You were still at your accounting job?
No, I quit the accounting job and then I started with Abilene Christian University in admissions. So it's not actually recruiting, but it's still interacting with college students, basically convincing them to join our MBA program.
Yeah.
So, but then it was a journey after that. And then been doing campus recruiting since, so it all worked out.
Yeah, I love that. that you like chased your passion through that. And so what you enjoy most about it is that student interaction as well still.
Yeah, I would say so. And just being able to like impact a random kid who will eventually become like a leader in the company, I think that was pretty cool.
Very cool. Okay, Daniel, what about you?
Yeah, so I graduated with a history degree from NYU, which is debt on debt on debt. And I actually, in college, I thought I was going to go to seminary. So I had that playing in the back of my mind for a while, had a crisis moment senior year, ended up deciding not to go into seminary. And I won't go too far into it, but I went on this like personal vision trip to Asia for like a handful of months. And when I got back, I became a barista in New York. So I worked at Blue Bottle Coffee across the street from Grand Central Station for like 10 months. So full-time barista, minimum wage in New York.
More debt. Your debt.
I tried not to. I lived like a homeless person.
Okay.
Barely ate. But yeah, God was really good to me in that season despite that. But what had happened was when I applied for the barista job, I actually applied for an internship at a tech company called Foursquare. There used to be like a Yelp competitor back in the day. And they never got back to me. But 10 months later, they reached out and they said, are you still looking for an internship?
Dang.
And I was like, what the heck? Right? So I went in for the interview, didn't really expect much because I was actually enjoying my barista time. Interviewed with the hiring manager and he was just like such a good human being. And so I left the interview being like, I want to work under this guy. I don't care what I'm going to do, like whatever. So I got into the job and then I found out like randomly that someone I had known from NorCal who also lived in New York was at the company on the recruiting team. And so he, on like the first day, he was like, oh, let's get lunch or whatever at like the company cafeteria, blah, blah. And then a couple months later, he was like, hey, what are you going to do when your internship's over? And I'm like, I don't know, right? It was like a data entry job, like super low level. And he was like, hey, you want to do what I do? Like, I literally just schedule interviews. You don't need any of those skills and they pay well because it's tech. So I was like, tell me more. And I was blown away by the amount of money that was in tech. You know, coming out as a history major, thinking about seminary, I was like, dude, I'm going to make like 40 grand, 50 grand a year for most of my life, maybe, right? But literally starting salaries for this coordinator role was, I think at the time, like 56, 58 grand with zero experience, right? And so going back to my 4, I hated recruiting from beginning to actually up to maybe like 6-7 months ago.
Oh.
Yeah. Wow. The only reason I stuck with it is because I had no other job experiences and it paid really well. And God just kind of like allowed me to line up company after company, like really solid logos in my resume. And so I was just like, you know what? Like, I have experience doing this. I'm getting paid well. Like, I'm at these cooler companies. And so I just kind of stuck with it. And then my most recent job was at a venture capital firm, which was like completely out of left field. But basically, for those of you who don't know, venture basically invests money into startup companies and they make a return when they go public or get acquired or stuff like that. And a new trend in venture right now is having internal recruiters at the firm that recruit for the companies that they invest in. So like, I give you money to succeed. I also help you hire the best people to succeed is the kind of concept that they have. And I never heard of this before until my previous manager randomly reached out to me. And that, I ultimately got laid off. But that journey actually sparked some sort of like passion in me, partially because in venture, I had to get so creative in terms of how I find people, how I attract talent to like these small 5-person, 3-person companies. And I had never faced a challenge like that in my career before. So I think that kind of ignited the creative side and like, you know, things like that. So that's kind of why today I'm a little bit more passionate.
And I'm assuming that's why you didn't like it for so long. If you could share as a Ford, what made you not like it until that creativity side was sparked?
So, I mean, for my first role as a coordinator, it's like literally you're just like
mundane.
It's so mundane and it's the same thing again and again and again. And it's people like demanding things from you. It's like, why is this interview not scheduled? Like, where is this candidate in the process?
Hey, I need the coordinators, man.
If you're an RC out there, we respect you. Thank you for doing your job well. But yeah, so it was like horrible, right? But just the paycheck was so good for what I was doing, you know?
Yeah.
And then when I ultimately got into recruiting, it is still mundane in a lot of ways, right? Like, and these two probably can attest to it. Like, when you're interviewing candidates, you're asking the same questions a lot of times. Like, sometimes you start with a script, like all sorts of stuff like that. So it kind of like kills your, I don't know, like social and creative side a little bit if you're too into the weeds. And so that's kind of why I didn't like love it.
Yeah, there's definitely days where I'd come home and I would just tell Susie, I'd be like, I'm gonna just stare at this wall for like a solid 20 minutes. Like I just can't talk right now. So
yeah,
I get it.
It's like you had so many conversations with people, but there wasn't much substance, like
no depth or anything.
Right?
Is that what it's like for you, Matt? He often comes out of that room and just doesn't talk. And that's so interesting because, like, as not necessarily extroverted people, but maybe, you know, people oriented, but that would drain you if those are like the constant kind of interactions you're having as well. Do you know, I applied for an RC role for Teacher America because, oh my gosh, I would love to do stuff like this. And I got rejected, or not rejected, but I didn't get the job. But I think that was also hard for me. Like, and then I started realizing starting a career in education, I thought it was going to be easy to go back into marketing or have that on my resume or whatnot. But it is hard. Anyways, to me, you guys had my ideal job after being a teacher. So hope that means something. I would be curious, like, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges and perks of being a recruiter? And I would say not necessarily like just because of the job. Maybe before you got married, it was easier in certain ways. Maybe before you had kids, it was easier in certain ways, you know, like different things like that too. Just so like as someone might be even considering this type of role, like what are some things big picture that they would keep in mind also in the forefront?
Yeah. The pros for me and the reason why I like it is because in recruiting, you're kind of controlling of your own schedule. If I have to hire this role, I usually have like a meeting with the hiring manager and I say, okay, in 3 weeks, we're going to have interviews. And I just say, these are the dates that we're going to have interviews. And then from that date and going backwards till now, it's like all up to me. Like when I want to schedule interviews, when I want to do phone screens, all that kind of stuff. So it's allowed me to have a lot of freedom now. When I was working fully remote, it was really nice because if I didn't have any work to do, I didn't have to act like I had work to do in the office or I had to like come up with projects. I can literally just like spend time with like friends or like family or like have a longer lunch. And it's all about like, oh, as long as you make the hire within a certain amount of time, like everything's fine. So I really liked that flexibility. The cons, I mean, being single and being a recruiter, it wasn't too bad because I could just come back to my apartment, again, stare at a wall or do any of that stuff. But I think it's different because I am an extroverted person and I do get energy from other people. So I have to like go out and like hang out with people and all that kind of stuff. But it was definitely like now with a kid, it's like coming home and trying to be as present as possible without, but like deep down inside, I'm kind of like, oh, I just want to like,
stare at a wall.
Like, but I think what's great is Susie like knows that 'cause she's only known me being in recruiting. So she's like, when you come home, you're 30 minutes to an hour, like, just do what you got to do kind of thing. So it really helps having that because it could be draining. So there's different types of recruiting. At Southwest, as a recruiter, I was in every single interview. So I would do the phone screens. I would talk to the candidate on the phone first. Then when I bring him in to meet with the hiring manager or whoever, I'm also in that interview. So I might be doing in one day, I could sit in 10 interviews, whether at Nike and at Fossil currently, you're more of like a project manager where you do the phone screen. But then after that, you're not in any interviews. It's just the candidate and the hiring manager. So it's a lot less time consuming right now. But when I was at Southwest, because I was in every interview, it was like super draining. 4 days out of the week, I would have 10 interviews a day, not including travel. But again, I think it's different when you have a family and you don't, because you can kind of decompress differently. But yeah, the biggest pro I would say is flexibility, helping friends find jobs, all that kind of stuff. But it can be draining when you're in an interview and you're talking to somebody and you're like, so tell me about your background. Like, yeah, so I worked at this company for 3 years. And you're like, all right,
what did you do?
What did you do?
Oh, like you have to.
So you have to kind of like, you're kind of like pulling teeth. And then there's the complete opposite where you ask, how was your day? And then 40 minutes pass and you're trying to like, hold on, I got to ask the first question. That's always hard. But yeah, no, it's a good time. We could probably, all three of us can probably write a series of books on
this is true.
Interviews and the stories that we have and the people that we've interacted with and stuff. I won't go too much into the cons.
Abe, how's it like speaking with students who rarely interview.
I know.
Yeah, so I'm in a different world than these guys. So let me just, I guess, walk you through like a typical day maybe. So my job's pretty seasonal in terms of like being busy or not. So I would say from about end of January to mid-March, I'm traveling. And then September, October as well. So pretty heavy there. For me, at least for my current job, I travel a lot to the Bay Area, UC Berkeley, San Jose State, and then Texas, UT Austin, Chicago, Detroit. So basically kind of all over the place, but main area is the Bay. So lots of travel for me. But for the most part, when I go to like career fairs, it's kind of almost the same thing. Like these these college students, most of them are just like, some of them just go straight to the point. Some of them like kind of do their spiel right away.
Their pitch.
Their pitch.
That they've practiced so hard.
Yeah, well, I hate when they do that. So they shouldn't do that. They should just let me ask the question first, and then we can start going. But most of them are like,
just go boom.
Yeah, they just go boom right away into it. For me, I kind of I guess it does turn me off, but it's not a good conversation starter. What a good conversation starter would be, hey man, I'll start off like, hey, how's your semester going? I know there's like a bunch of companies here, but like, how's your morning? And then we'll start off a conversation like that.
Oh, you would make me feel I'm safe to be me in this, whatever.
Yeah, of course. Come to ST Microelectronics, right?
I think that's huge because a lot of people, when they think about interviews, they get so nervous and they try to be almost someone that maybe they're not. And I always tell people your true authentic self means more than your experience. Because for us as recruiters, like we're trying to get to know you as a person and if you'll be a good fit first for this team or like for the company, or like if you're someone I would want to even work with,
right?
And then your skills come after. So I know there's a lot of people that are like, hi, my name is Josh Kim and I went to they just go all into it and you're just kind of like taken aback and you can't have like authentic conversation because you ask a question and they already have like a script ready for like the answer.
It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a way to tell your story professionally, but in terms of conversationally, you shouldn't be so scripted is kind of like my thought on that.
Wait, I am curious. So the hiring manager then decides who gets hired. How do you weed out to that? Is it just based on the criteria, or like maybe that's even a misconception or not within recruiters, but it's like, do you just get to like whatever you feel goes on to the next round? Like, can someone pay you, or like, you know?
Can someone pay you?
Wow.
How much money have you guys made in the last I'm just kidding, X out.
So kind of terminology wise, the hiring manager is just a person that needs to make the hire, right?
Okay.
So they're the one who has an open role that they need to fill. They also ultimately play a huge part in making the decision if someone gets hired or not. But in most companies, there's multiple rounds of interviews, right? So like first round is always recruiter call. Like that's when we talk to the candidate. We are usually given a list of questions or things to suss out basically in that call. If we give a thumbs up, then they, depending on the industry, a little different, but they go to like some sort of like technical round or some sort of like, you know, can this person do the job or are they skilled? Then it kind of commences, you know, into like a final round or another technical round in between or something like that, where they meet more members of the team. Each member of the team will assess for a different thing. So one type of interview is like a behavioral interview. Other types of interviews are like culture fit interview. Another one might be more technical or, you know, things like that. So based on all of that, we debrief at the end, everyone who's been part of the interview process, and then they make a decision as a team or the hiring manager if they're going to make an offer or not.
Okay, yeah, this all comes back to me. I've been out of the game for like 5 years. I, don't remember much of the working world, but thank you for that process because I think that's a reminder of how it works. Oh, I am curious. Now that you have a child, how is this traveling kind of life?
So before, it was great because I always wanted to travel everywhere. But now having Levi...
Do you
There's
see
pros and cons.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the pro that you get to travel.
The pro is, I guess Esther's going to listen to this.
Choose your words wisely.
Try to take a deep breath here. I mean, honestly, I get to kind of get away for a day or two from the baby stuff, which is actually helps Esther because I'm more rejuvenated when I come back and ready to do dad stuff again. But it is kind of tough with the baby now. For example, today I was working from home and Levi was just crying his eyes out. And I had a call and I needed to take this call. I was with a very important person. And I like yelled out the room to Esther, like, come and get Levi right now. I have to get on a call with Pam right now. So that's been a struggle. We're actually going to do daycare soon. So hopefully that
that's huge.
That will relieve a lot of stress. But I would say with a kid, it's been a little tough, but a good thing about being a recruiter is what Josh said, like the flexibility. Like I can work from home, make my own schedule. Like I could go on a coffee run for a couple hours and then come back and be okay.
You jealous, Matt?
Yep.
Enneagram 9's dream. I didn't hear what you said. What did he say?
He said about getting coffee or getting away from you.
I said, just kidding.
Don't forget the just kidding.
He said, just kidding.
That came real fast.
So then, Daniel, for you, you're about to get married. Do you anticipate any like transitional things happening with your job with that new life stage as well? Or I guess not yet.
Yeah, not yet. And like, honestly, in like software tech, if you go to a big enough company, it's a pretty standard 9 to 5. So there's nothing crazy going on. If you're ultra passionate about your career and you're doing extra stuff, which I feel like I'm kind of becoming that now, then you might have more stuff. But if you're at smaller companies, definitely it's a struggle. Like my last firm was like 5 people. So like it was 5 people and the recruiting team was 3. So it was just a lot of work. I think the other distinction is, I know Josh started in the agency world. So there's 2 kind of main categories of recruiting is in-house recruiting, which is if you're working internally at a company, and then agency. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like agency life can be so miserable.
It was the worst.
Dude,
It was the worst. Yeah.
big respect for the agency people.
Yeah, but that's where a lot of people kind of cut their teeth and like learn a lot of recruiting skills that help them later in
What does cut their teeth mean?
like just honing their skill set.
Never heard
like,
that term.
It's an NYU thing.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah. So I mean, it kind of depends how you're looking at your career, right? Like married people probably don't want to be in an agency situation, and it's very heavily commission based in agency. So if you're not making hires and you're not bringing in the bread, and then you might get laid off, like all this kind of stuff, as opposed to for like bigger tech company, unless there's a macroeconomic situation or like you're just performing very badly for a long time, those are the only scenarios where you might get laid off. But
Yeah, in agency, I was making $15 an hour, and then the rest was commission. But my commission was based on my candidates' salaries. So if I were able to push them to get more money, then I would get paid more. But then agency as well, it's how Daniel said, like corporate or in-house is more 9 to 5. Agency, I feel like it's like 24/7. Like you just like, you have to be available. I was the best man at my cousin's wedding. And in between the in between the ceremony and the reception, I had to fire someone. So I got like, my phone kept blowing up during the ceremony, and I saw it was my boss, and I was like, what is going on? So like, we got done with the ceremony. I called him. He's like, hey, you have to fire this person. And I was like, I'm at a wedding. And he's like, I don't care. You have an hour. So I was like, okay. And I was like, all right. So I'm like in the limo, like, when am I going to do this? I can't do it now. So I had to like, once we got, I sprinted to like behind the building. And I called this guy. I was like, hey man, like, I'm so sorry, but your contract ended effective immediately. Like, I don't have a lot of time to talk. I can talk to you later. Like,
And then go give the speech.
yeah. So it was just like, when Daniel says miserable, like those are that's very rare. Hopefully it's a rare instance, but you are more like on the clock, like you're kind of on call at all times.
I like what you're doing here, though, is like you're also giving insight into whether it's different industries or different terms or whatnot. And since you guys do come from different fields, are there any like, whether it's unique factors or trends within your specific industry, even tips or tricks of the trade or whatever to help people cut their teeth before they go to get it done there, that you guys would have to share your wisdom on that end?
For me, I think it always helps if you know someone from the company. I think referrals are my number one source right now.
Even for college students?
Yeah. So my current interns, if they know someone from their class, they're more than likely going to be hired. Or like if they refer someone from their class, they're probably going to be hired with us. Because I kind of trust the interns. I hired them. So
so like networking is important within the student network.
Yeah.
Not like, daddy got me this job, like that.
no.
A legacy.
There is some of that going on.
There definitely is.
We have like a saying that like good people know good people. And if we hired someone because they were a good culture fit and they got along with these other people, that kind of like,
Implies,
yeah, that kind of implies that. And like, I don't need to suss them out for culture fit, right? At that point, because we trust this person that we just hired.
The best case scenario is you know the recruiter, specifically working on that role, and you act like you don't know them. I think that's the best case scenario, because I've helped a lot of friends where I've specifically recruited for their roles, and I would negotiate their salaries without them like present or anything, because I knew what they wanted. And me getting into Nike too, I knew the recruiter. Like I happened to help her son try to get a job at Southwest, and we just kept in touch for like 5 years, and then she was like, hey, there's an opening at Nike, and she just happened to think of me because I helped out her son.
So guys, their names are Josh, Kim, okay, just kidding. Oh, okay. You can do it collectively, or if each of you have industry specific, but what would be like the top 3 to 5 tips you would give to a candidate, and then maybe like some big don't do these? Yeah, think about it.
I was waiting for a pause for so long.
Oh, yeah. I'm also curious on that end, because while my husband was microwaving some food, I might input the background of that conversation, but I would be curious, when would it ever be appropriate for somebody to just like try to contact you via LinkedIn, even though that's not the order, or would you advise not to do that?
So I've gotten like almost all my jobs to LinkedIn. I guess background. So I did not have a job coming out of college for like a month or two. So that was pretty tough. But I did a nice little LinkedIn message to the PwC guy, or this PwC recruiter who was trying to recruit my friend, but my friend's like, hey, I already got a job, but here's another guy, which is me. So I messaged him like, hey, my friend told me this. And it was a good message, and I got the job through that. I also got this current job through LinkedIn as well. For me, I don't know about you guys.
Like doing a personal message.
Yeah, you have to like curate the message and tailor it where it's not too much, kind of to the point, but also, I don't know, try to find maybe something that you can relate to with the recruiter.
Right.
Like, for example, if a student LinkedIn messages me like, hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm this major, can you tell me how to apply? That's so bad.
Yeah.
But if you tell me, I have gotten several of those. But if you tell me like, hey, Abe, this is Dylan. I don't know if you remember, but I met you at the info session and we talked about how you like basketball, or like how you mentioned that there's a job and they're looking for my specific skills. Let's connect.
Dang, shout out to Dylan.
Dang, that was a
My boy Dylan.
template right there. Yeah. Okay, so that's a good do
That's a
within
good
LinkedIn,
do.
right?
Yeah.
What are some bad do's on LinkedIn?
Oh, for sure. Hi, my name is so-and-so, and I applied to this role. I would love to get an interview. Because in a company, usually there's multiple recruiters. So the fact that you're just shooting your shot, hoping that this person is the recruiter for this role is big, because then sometimes I'll see that and I'll immediately like recognize the name and know if there's other people recruiting and be like, hey, did anyone else get this message from this person? And they'll be like, oh yeah, we all got it. Like they just like blasted it to like 15 recruiters. And it's kind of like a bad look. That's the biggest thing. I get those messages. I get like maybe 10 of those messages a day. I feel bad, but I ignore so many people on LinkedIn because I'm like, there's a proper way to use LinkedIn to your advantage. Like that's how I even got my job at Southwest. But there's ways where I feel like TikTok and Instagram are telling you how to use LinkedIn, and it's just like...
That's good to know, right? Like, if you want to do something via LinkedIn, how would you do it well? And then if you think you're shooting your shot, but you're actually dulling the... I'm trying to make a Daniel...
Biting into...
What about you, Daniel?
I think I have like similar experiences with both of them. So like I'm recruiting for software engineers, but this guy wants to work at my company and he reaches out for like an HR role or like, I don't know, like marketing role. And I'm like, dude, I don't do that. If somehow you do your research and you find the recruiter recruiting for the very specific role, you should mention that. It's like, hey, like, I heard that you're the one at X company that does front end recruiting or like whatever it is. And kind of, you know, build that kind of rapport and connection. I think that can be positive. But in most cases, like Josh, like I ignore most LinkedIn connection requests or messages unless like I see potential in their profile and I connect with them for the future.
Yeah, I had a mentor in college say, when you're applying to your role, he was all about like persistence, but he was like, you have to be very creative in how you reach out to these people. So he was like, fun fact, people love talking about themselves. So you need to try to cater a message in a way. So like when I would reach out to people, I'd be like, hi, my name is Josh. I just moved to Texas and I see you work at Southwest Airlines and it's one of my dream companies. I just wanted to kind of hear your story and how you got to Southwest. Like if you have a couple minutes, that'd be great. And that's how I got the job at Southwest because she was just like, this is how I did it. Like I'll connect you with this person and that person. And then it kind of like worked out that way. And I was like, oh my gosh, like did I find the formula to like get a job? And it didn't work for me after that. But like that one job, it worked. And I know like there's people that I get messages and if they ask those types of questions and they're being genuine to like try to understand like I need help in my career path. Like, can you help? I would 9 times out of 10 help out, you know, but if you're just like, I applied.
Yeah.
Give me an interview.
So
I'm just like, see ya.
Okay, what about other tips you might have for a candidate?
So for me, I always tell people don't give them your salary expectation until as late in the process as possible. As a recruiter, I hate that. Yeah, dude, I was just but from a candidate's perspective, that is what you have to do.
So what about like when you have to fill out a form?
Yeah. So, I mean, in that case, like you kind of have to give a range, but I try to be broader in the range I provide.
Say negotiable.
Yeah.
Or put 0 or NA.
Yeah, something like that. But for me, for example, a lot of times I tell folks like, you know, they always try to ask in the first recruiter call, like, oh, what's your salary expectations, blah, blah, blah. I always am like, hey, I actually haven't really thought about that as much. Like I was just more interested in learning about the job on this call and like all this kind of stuff. And then I ask them, do you have a ballpark range in mind? And then based on what they say, I kind of adjust my numbers later, further down the process. But that is the best way that I coach people when they interview. Yeah.
It definitely hurts you as the recruiter sometimes, as Daniel said, because like we have a budget and we never want to pass someone through if they're over budget because then they can get to the last stage and we're like, hey, this role is $90K. And they're like, yeah, I actually want 150. And we're like, okay, well, we got to move on to someone else and we just wasted a lot of time. So I think that's what Daniel was saying was like, it hurts us. But then every time I ask like, oh, do you have like a compensation range or a budget that you're looking for? And if they were like, oh, I haven't thought about it, can you give me the budget? I always grin because I'm like, you know your stuff. like you did your homework. But
so what if someone were to give you an answer and it was like, haha, sucker, because they just gave you like a low...
like they lowballed themselves.
Yeah.
Did you doubt your friends?
I'm definitely at the stage where I'm very transparent with my candidates. Or if they're so innocent and like I think my range is like at 80K and this position is like 80 to 120, I'll be like, okay, cool. Like this goes up to 120. So I'll put you in at like 100. Like I'll always like give them the benefit of the doubt because I know what it's like being on that side. And if I knew that I just lowballed myself, or if I didn't know and I felt like pressure to answer, and then I ended up accepting a job knowing that, oh, I could have made like 40K more. I was on the lowest side of the budget. Yeah. It doesn't make you feel good. Yeah. And then it doesn't make you happy, even though like it might be like your dream company, but then like financially you're not happy. So it already starts jaded and a little bit of like toxicity. Yeah. So I try to be as transparent as possible.
That's true for the overall big picture.
Topic of salary. Another tip that I would say is at the end, once you get the job offer, don't accept it right away. Always negotiate.
Simmer.
Yeah. Let them wait. Don't, they're like, okay. The recruiter calls you like, congratulate that I'm calling them, right? Dylan, my boy.
Dylan, bro. Dylan got an offer.
Man, we're so excited to have you. It's 80K. I know you mentioned, I don't know, he talked about 78. I gave him an extra 2. Dylan, if I was Dylan, I'd be like, man, I appreciate it, Abe. When's my deadline? I give him the deadline. And then he's like, okay, I'll get back to you. I would wait like the day before, maybe the deadline, or maybe 3 days after the call. Then email, at least me, that's what I would do.
100%.
Email the recruiter and tell them, hey, I appreciate the offer, but my target salary is actually this, and then just wait.
Even though he said 78, he should then...
Yeah,
Yes.
just negotiate.
If you can tell, all of these strategies are very much like buying a car, right? So like when Daniel said like, don't try to wait till the last minute. It's like, at the last minute, you're like, oh, by the way, I have a trade-in. Because you just moved their car sale down and then you're getting a trade-in, so you got the best deal. And there's also like, never accept it. Like if you get an offer, you always walk out of the dealership. It's like the same thing. Like you never want to say like, yeah, I accept the offer. I'll sign right now. Like always negotiate, because the worst they're going to say is no. They're not going to retract your offer. Yeah. So if they offer you $100K and then you're like, I actually want 120. The worst case scenario is going to like, no, you're going to get 100K. And you're like, okay, fine. Or like, can I get more PTO? Always try to throw something in.
And if you're feeling bold enough.
Dylan just lost his
No, they will never retract the offer. I'm saying is, even if the recruiter, if I say, oh, Dylan, like I talked to Bob, the director, and he's like, we don't have any room. Okay. Dylan should email me back saying, well, is there like a sign-on bonus? We can have? I would just, I don't know what other tactics, but I would just go sign-on bonus. That's how I got a sign-on bonus on my current job, even though they didn't increase the salary that I wanted. So, and I got that sign-on bonus. So the worst that they can say is no. But after that sign-on bonus, I think you should accept it.
Yeah. But they will never retract the offer, because you are like the candidate that they want. And like, there's no way if you pitch a number back, they're going to be like, all right, no, we're going to go with the other guy. Like,
yeah, because it takes too much time to interview another candidate, or maybe the second candidate that we have, they probably have another offer too. So...
Yeah, I mean, that's like the biggest thing is they just spent like 9 hours getting to know you, like the entire team.
Or flew you there. So they put so much money into just interviewing you, and they finally found the right person to give an offer to. So it's very, very rare that they would retract the offer.
And there's a chance you could even get more money without negotiating it by just waiting. Because like behind the scenes, the hiring manager is probably pinging me, being like, what's going on? Why haven't you heard back?
Yeah.
Did we do something wrong? Like, should we offer them more? Sometimes they'll like start freaking out.
Do they not know these tricks that they're just waiting?
Shockingly, most don't. I don't know. I've never
like
had...
the business. Probably
yeah, like
not.
The business has no idea.
Yeah, they don't. Their mind is in the recruitment and getting the hire, but it's not like their primary thing in their daily tasks.
Yeah, and you can never fully tell if the person, like the candidate's good at speaking about this. You can never tell like if they're lying or if they're just like bluffing.
Yeah,
you know, like those things. There's no certainty on it, so. Usually, even if the company knows about tactics, they're not going to sit there like risk it, you know, just in case. Yeah.
Wow, you guys have seen a lot on your side of the window pane.
As much as you're being interviewed, you should interview every single person, especially if they're going to be your manager.
Oh yeah, that's number one for
that's
me.
Like the biggest thing is that you can join a company and it can be the greatest company of all time, and it's like your dream company and you're like dying to work there.
Yeah.
If you have a bad manager, that will ruin your experience completely. So like for me, like when I interview with companies, I always ask managers like, what's your leadership style? I'll sometimes be like, are you a micromanager? Like, is that kind of your style? Like, do I need to like send in reports every week? Because I want to know. I want to know exactly what I'm going into. Like, I don't want no hiccups, because there's been times where I've said like no to companies because I can't work under. I interviewed for Meta, Facebook, and I went through the process seamlessly, then didn't hear back for a month. And then in that month, I interviewed with Nike, and I got the offer at Nike. And then I was like, oh, I'll reach out to Meta, be like, hey guys, I got an offer from Nike. And they just emailed me an offer, and they're like, this is your team. And I was like, I never talked to this person. I never interviewed for this team. I was like, no, I'm not going to take it. And they're like, how much did you get at Nike? And I told them, and they're like, we'll give you, like, name your number. And like, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, like, this is not a good scenario for me, because you guys are just throwing money with a team I didn't even interview on. I know some people would take it because they're like, wow, this is a lot of money like I could make. But then like 6 months later, that whole team got laid off. Like, because like they were just hiring too fast and they're just like doing too much. But I always say interview them as much as they interview you, because you want to set yourself up for success in that company, and you don't want to walk in and not have asked certain questions.
I think that comes with doing the work of self-awareness too. Like, what kind of worker are you? Like, do you know that about yourself to be able to then know like where you might step step into a toxic environment that wouldn't be beneficial for you beyond like the staring at the wall ways to,
sure.
you know, like that. Yeah, you can do that, but other things that might be more toxic in that way. So that's good advice. Any other
I
don'ts?
guess some like encouragement for those looking for a job right now. Like I've been where I've been rejected by so many companies, or like gone to the final round. They flew me to, or they didn't fly me. I drove to Austin. I drove to Austin for Meta. I didn't get the job. I was so bummed. Dude, they had
Meta?
or it was Facebook back then.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
had like buffet.
Yeah.
Like the chef was there. Like it looked like a whole new world. I wanted it so badly, but I'm glad I didn't, right? Because I'm here now. The encouragement is like, I would just keep trying. If you didn't get the job, then there's another opportunity. And like what Josh said, I think that's my number one. Make sure you like your manager, because that's going to be the person that you report to every single day.
I think it's the same for me. Like, literally, I've made my first 3 decisions in companies purely based on who I talk to. Like, I was like, I want to work with this person. And that's why I went to those companies. Nothing about the product, or I didn't really know much about tech when I first started too. So I think that's huge. And those relationships in those places, like Josh was saying earlier, those will lead to other jobs in the future. If you have a great working relationship, great just social relationship with your coworkers, especially in tech, they always say like, oh, the Valley is a small place. It's kind of what like Silicon Valley is a small place is what they always say. And it's true. I used to work at Slack, and a bunch of recruiters from Slack now work at the top AI companies because just a couple recruiters went there first, and then they just started referring everybody in. So those kind of connections do matter. So you want to work with people you want to work with.
I love it. I feel like this is like a reminder. I think when we get interviewed, we are the ones on the line, but you are also reminding whoever is preparing for those interviews that they have just as much say in that part of like authoring their next step. So that's so valuable to hear from you guys. Thank you. Last question would just be, if you, either whether it's you as like your young 20s, you know, just starting in this field, or someone else that is considering a career in recruiting, is there anything you'd want to say to them or advise them?
Don't do it.
Y'all are too late in the game.
I think, I guess for being a recruiter, I would have been if I knew I was going to be a recruiter, I would have gone like a communications major or something like that. I think that would have been something I would have done, not accounting.
Yeah, honestly, like background-wise, literally, I have met recruiters that come from every single background. Like they were like screenwriters or like teachers. A lot of teachers end up in recruiting.
Not me though.
It's not too late, Joey.
Not too late.
Next year, Matt will be interviewing all 4 of them.
Let's go.
Yeah. So in terms of background and stuff, nothing to pinpoint there. A word of advice for software engineers, though, if you're coming out of college, oh man, like CS is so tough. I wouldn't recommend people going to computer science anymore unless you're specializing in AI and like ML stuff or like very niche hardware. I think for recruiting folks, like there's a lot of tooling now that you can get your hands on even for free just to try that involve AI. And I think it can actually make your work life a lot more simpler and faster. And so if you're looking into a career there, knowing how to like leverage those things and showing that to companies when you interview, I think could be very beneficial.
Like Daniel said, like anybody can get into recruiting. It's a very, you can get into any entry level recruiting position, and you can go the agency route and try to grind it out for a couple of years before you go in-house, or you can go like the coordinator route in-house. I feel like is the best way to stay kind of on the corporate side. But I think for me, like I hated interviewing, and I hated being interviewed as well. But I've learned through recruiting and everything that if you're going to get an interview, you have everything that they want. Like, so you should be confident going into that, being like, oh, they chose me for a specific reason, knowing that I can do the job. Now it's just up to me to be me and see if I'm a good fit. And if you're not a good fit, don't be so hard on yourself, because you probably dodged a bullet. Like, you probably totally dodged a situation that would be miserable for you because you just weren't a good fit, or something wasn't happening. Like Abe said, like with Meta and the free food, like I've interviewed at companies where I'm like, oh my gosh, I would retire here. Like I want this so bad. I interviewed for Riot Games where they were like, yeah, on Tuesdays and Thursdays we play League of Legends from 11, and I didn't even play League of Legends, but I was like, that sounds great, like that sounds amazing. And I interviewed for like another gaming company called 100 Thieves. I remember like crying afterwards because I was like, oh, I really wanted this. But then at the end of the day, I was like, don't invest yourself so much, because at the end of the day, it's like that door closed for a reason. And like there's better things to come. And I think if you do find a job and you do get an offer, most of the time it's just because it's going to be the right fit for you. So yeah, don't get too invested in these companies, because unfortunately at the end of the day, you're just a number.
Yeah.
If they say we're family, run away.
Yeah.
Oh my
I agree with that.
You're literally just a number, unfortunately. At least from our point of view, like at the end of the day, that's all you are. So don't be too invested, and don't take on so much emotion when you're doing it. And just kind of just go in and just be yourself.
Befriend the recruiter.
Befriend the recruiter.
Would you say you guys are like therapists for never mind.
Well, actually today I had to make a bunch of, we call them feedback calls, where they're all the people that didn't get the job. Like at least people that make it to the final round, I at least want to talk to them, because it sucks just getting an email saying you didn't get the job and you don't know why. I wouldn't say a therapist, but in a way you do have to like
the company counsel.
Yeah, and it does take a toll on us sometimes when we're talking to people and they really wanted it.
Yeah.
They're like, what could I have done better? And you can tell they're like so into it. And I kind of want to just be like, don't be so invested. Like it's all good. Like you're gonna find your place soon. But yeah, those calls could definitely be.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for your insight. I feel like this was such a fun conversation, even though it was just about recruiting.
Felt I held back on so many stories.
Why? No.
We would be here for way too long.
Well, it is late, so I appreciate your time and staying back. I did have one question, because I have been doing it lately. Do you guys want to do the fruit question that I asked?
Fruit question.
That would describe yourself.
Whoa.
So I just like, Koreans like fruit, Asians like fruit in general. And I like to ask my guests, whether it's about the topic, but what fruit do you feel like describes you and why? And so since we got to hear you guys as recruiters, let's end it with just you as you. And is there a fruit that you would like us to think about you the next time we eat it?
I won't lie, I didn't eat fruit growing up.
Same, bro.
So...
What?
One of my first realizations was when I had dinner with their family and they brought out fruit after dinner.
Yeah.
I ate fruit growing up. It's not like I didn't eat fruit, but they brought fruit out and I was like, oh, what's the dessert? And they're like, it's the fruit. And I was like, oh, okay. Cool. Like, so I don't know.
Okay,
peach?
what was that
Why
fruit?
peach?
Why a peach?
Like I bruise like a peach, bro. Like I could bruise easily. I'm super injury prone. These are all negatives. I don't know.
What was the fruit that you had with Susie that after that dinner? Was it not a memorable dessert?
Well, it's funny because a lot of times it's like or like melons. I'm actually like, quote unquote, like allergic to melons. Like my throat gets a little itchy. I'll still eat it though. And sometimes we have to like remind her mom that like I'm allergic, but I don't remind her ever. I'm just like, oh yeah, I'll eat it. Like don't worry. Like Susie will, but pretty sure it was probably like watermelon. Lately, we've been eating a lot of though, or persimmons.
Cool.
I never answered your question, really.
Yeah. No, but look at you trying to please mother-in-law by sacrificing your potential death for it. I'm just kidding.
I do love pineapples, though.
Well, you're a pineapple guy?
I love a good pineapple.
All right, moving on. Thank you.
I think I am... This one's a hard one for me. I thought of two. One is strawberry, because if they're ripe, they're amazing, but if they're not, it's like it's a chore to eat them,
Yeah.
And then the other one was kiwis, because they can be very sour or kind of like that sweet sour. So I think I'm like a seasonal.
What is the right season for you?
Seasonal person.
Well, you're stepping into your husband's season soon, so I hope that is your ripest season yet. Oh, what a good little thing I did there. David, what about you?
Man, this is hard. The only thing I could think of is actually not a fruit guy.
Well, I'm so glad I decided to ask this question.
What about like meat or vegetables?
So you're changing the whole question?
I want to hear the fruit.
I only can think of a watermelon because, so I guess if you eat a watermelon, like cut it up and it's like wide, I guess like I smile most of the time, I think. So the next time you eat a watermelon...
Just know that your smile is not as big as Abe's.
Yeah, that's mine.
Well, next time, maybe we will be interviewing you with your spouses next, because a spouse will be on that list too. So I am trying to do, right, like in the beginning of January, doing like a Enneagram for like managers or teams in general. So stay tuned for that. And so when my course is going to be for marriages, then you guys can come back on and tease what Enneagrams look like in relationship with one another. So let me get a yes here again, just like I forced you guys to say. But yeah, seriously, thank you guys so much for just sharing your insight and your wisdom, right? I think interviewing is one of the most like anxious things that people can do because there is a lot on the line, whether it's for your family, just to grow in your career. And so for you guys to kind of ease that and give some practical tips, I think will be very helpful on the other end. And if you are listening, I hope there was something that stuck with you and that you can walk into 2025 confidently with whatever new job you might be eyeing or just, kind of pushing you into that next career move. So for now, thank you guys for listening to another episode of
Color Commentary.
Bye.